Hello everyone, this is PK Entertainment and we are back again, and we're now going to talk about Star Wars and Disney Plus, and following the gigantic wave of content announcements from the Disney Plus Investor Day. There were so many announcements and headlines from this news covering multiple genres and companies. We had lots of announcements from Marvel Studios, Pixar, but in this video I will concentrate on the Star Wars content. Now, I've done a previous video talking about all the Marvel Studios content, and you can check that out on the channel. I will leave a link within the description. Now, overall, I've got mixed feelings on the announcements that were made. On one aspect, I suppose it's good that we're seeing a large investment within the Star Wars franchise. As we all know, there was a massive fallout and negative to toxic reaction regarding the Disney Star Wars trilogy and how that ended. So many people were wondering what was the future going ahead for the Star Wars franchise. We had really only the Mandalorian currently existing in terms of Star Wars content. So I think it's good that we're seeing now a large push and investment within the franchise. At the very least, there's still a passion for Star Wars content. There's still a large intention to put out more stories and expand on the mythology of the Star Wars franchise. So if you are a Star Wars fan, I suppose it's very pleasing from that perspective. Now, the other side of it is that a lot of the content, which I'll break down shortly, does seem to be again recycling or regurgitating a lot of what's gone on before. So we're suffering very much again from that prequelitis phase that we get with a lot of franchises, where we focus a lot more on past stories rather than expanding and taking the continuity in a more forward direction with fresh ideas and new characters. And that's what I always believe the franchises should be handled. Take it more forward in the future, therefore you're not bound by established canon, and you can really go out and expand the story in far more fresh and invigorated ways. But we will talk initially about all the announcements. Now, before I go ahead, I will warn you again that there will more likely be spoilers in this breakdown concerning everything from the original trilogy to the prequels to the Disney Star Wars trilogy to the Mandalorian, the Clone Wars, Rebels, everything involved within Star Wars. So just to pre-warn you before I go on this breakdown. So first off, we will talk about, for me, what was the most exciting and most interesting of the announcements, and that is the Ahsoka live action series. Now, most of us, we all know Ahsoka as the young Padawan who trained under Anakin Skywalker, and we saw her journey throughout the Star Wars Clone Wars animated series. We picked up later with the Rebels, where she made a couple of key appearances in the most standout episode of that series, and most recently she's made an appearance again for the first time with live action with the Mandalorian, with the episode titled The Jedi, and you can also check out that review within my channel. And I think, to be honest, this was the most obvious of the announcements. Ahsoka has been a large fan favourite throughout the various shows that she's been appearing in. There was a lot of hype and anticipation when she was going to appear on The Mandalorian, and I think overall there has been a very positive reaction. I think actress Rosario Dawson did a very good job in her portrayal of the character. From a visual aesthetic point of view, she very much looks like the character 100%, and it was a very convincing performance from her. So there was a lot of questions as to whether she would get her own live action series, and this now confirms it. So for me, I think there's a lot of mileage within the character, because we can concentrate very much so on what Ahsoka has been up to post end of the Clone Wars series, where we saw in that terrific end of season 7 where she seems to drop the lightsabers and go away. So we can concentrate what she went up to at the end of those events. We can also pick up at the end of the Rebel show, where she went ahead with Sabrine Wayne, and maybe they were on the hunt for Ezra Miller. There were slight hints when she appeared in The Mandalorian that she was on the hunt for Admiral Thrawn, if you know that character from the expanded universe. So there's a lot of mileage, there's a lot of huge storytelling potential that we can take with the character. So that's why I'm invested most within this television series. Lots of huge storytelling potential. For me, this was the biggest and best announcement of the content that was released from this presentation. The other major announcement was concerning the Obi-Wan series, which we've known for a while now was coming back, with Ewan McGregor reprising his role as the famous Jedi from the series. We had very scant details prior to this presentation of when the series would be released, how many episodes, the budget, and where the story would take place. Now, they did confirm in this announcement that the Obi-Wan series would take place, I believe, 10 years after the events of Revenge of the Sith. As we know from the fallout, that's where we had the climatic battle with Anakin Skywalker, and we saw the original genesis of Darth Vader. And the other major big announcement was that actor Hayden Christensen, who played Anakin in the prequel trilogy, will be returning in his role as Vader. Now, when Kathleen Kennedy made this announcement, one key thing to note is that she announced that Hayden would be returning as Vader and not Anakin. Now, when I read this news, we have to ask the question, does Vader merit a return to the storyline, and do we really need to see more storylines concerning Obi-Wan and Anakin? Because if we review the prequel trilogy, the Clone Wars, and the original trilogy, the story has kind of been explored enough, right? We've seen how they met together, how they trained together, the conflicts between the two. So all of the key moments between the relationship of Obi-Wan and Anakin has been touched upon. We've covered all of the most pivotal moments throughout their relationship. So I ask, what more can we do in terms of their relationship, in terms of their story? Is there a lot of merit in bringing Vader back to this narrative? Again, as I mentioned before, we're kind of going back and recycling old stories that we've seen before. Now, in terms of Hayden Christensen, he performed best in the Revenge of the Sith movies. And if we are going to see him return in some capacity, we really have to assume it's going to be in terms of flashbacks or dream sequences, because if you're going to bring him back and just have him in the Vader costume, then really asks, what's the point of bringing back the actor at all? If you're just going to have Vader in this Obi-Wan series, you could just get any actor to put in the costume, and then you can get somebody else to do the voiceover work. That's why I was very attentive to the fact that Kathleen Kennedy said that it's returning as Vader and not Anakin. So be very interesting to see what they do with this development. Also, she mentioned the rematch of the century. Now, this is the other issue that I have, because does bringing Anakin back to the series and having him confront Obi-Wan again, if it's going to be as Vader, does that encounter affect or taint in any way the encounter that the two have in A New Hope? Because what was special about that encounter is when they come together, you assume that both Obi-Wan and Vader haven't crossed each other's paths for a long time. That's what that makes that encounter, or what gives it a lot of weight, the fact that they haven't seen each other for many months or many years. But if we go along the timeline that they've been constantly crossing paths regularly between the events of Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, does it take away some of the significance and weight from the encounter in A New Hope? Now, I think it does. Now, many people will argue, well, you do have some leeway in terms of the gap between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, where yes, they could have crossed each other multiple times. They've kind of played a similar narrative between Obi-Wan and Darth Maul, where they've had the two cross paths multiple times from the Phantom Menace up until Rebels. But I just think it takes something away. But it is an avenue that they can cross, and again, we are relying on the presence of Vader again. As we all know, all of Star Wars fandom loves Vader, the most iconic, probably the most iconic character within the franchise, and certainly the most iconic villain, I think, within perhaps all movie fandom. But again, we're just going back to that tried and trusted formula. We used him in the prequels, we used him in Rebels, we used him in Rogue One, we used him in the conclusion of Clone Wars. So again, it's just that going back again to Vader, using him again to draw in fans. So I'm not sure I'm as invested. We could also argue that the Clone Wars represented, I think, the best relationship dynamic between Obi-Wan and Anakin. I don't think Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor had the same charisma and the same chemistry that what we saw in the Clone Wars as the character. So I'm not sure I'm as invested as Anakin returning in the show. We didn't get any more details in terms of the story of Obi-Wan, so that was very concerning as well. Surely you'd give some sort of thoughts as to what Obi-Wan's going to be up to, what kind of standalone adventures will we see from him in the future. So I'm sure we'll get more details disclosed in the next up and coming months, but for now I'm not entirely convinced that bringing back Vader, if that's going to be in some capacity, is the best way to go. I understand bringing back Anakin in terms of flashbacks and dreams, because of course Obi-Wan is going to reflect on what happened on the events of Revenge of the Sith as we see him going forward. So that is critical and very relevant to get reflection on Anakin, but I think not putting Vader in is probably the best idea. But we'll see in the later up and coming months. The details will be disclosed for this show. The next interesting announcement was the Rangers of the New Republic series. Now this will take place in the same continuity as The Mandalorian. It's the second spin-off from that show following the Ahsoka live action series. Not a lot of details were given in regard of the storyline here. A lot of speculation is that it will be led by the Cara Dune character played by Gina Carano from The Mandalorian, although there hasn't been confirmation yet. There's other speculation that it will feature a lot more of the pilots that we saw within The Mandalorian, and we did get more hints of Cara Dune's backstory in the recent episodes of The Mandalorian. I think it was episode 6 that we concentrated on. I think it was titled Scavengers, towards the end of that episode, where we got some reference towards Gina Carano's Cara Dune. So it will be very interesting to see where we take that episode in the future, but as for now, all we know that it's a spin-off from The Mandalorian, and if it is Cara Dune, I think that's a good win for Gina Carano, a big opportunity for her to be the lead character in a show. She's very popular and it's got good reception from a lot of the Star Wars fandom so far in her portrayal as Cara Dune, so that will be her big opportunity to showcase her as a lead actress and prove that she can carry a show. So be very interesting to see as further developments play out, and of course we'll provide you with more details as we get them on this Rangers of the New Republic series. The next announcement is that we will be getting a animated series revolving around the Bad Batch. Now if you watch the Clone Wars, you will know that this was a group of clone commandos that participated in the first story arc of season 7 of the Clone Wars series. I thought that was a very good opening batch of episodes, very action packed, very spectacular, and it was a good story involving the characters. But once again, I'm not sure that this merits an entire series concerning this group. Again, we're dealing with very much of a prequel storyline. There wasn't really any mention of the Bad Batch in any future continuity post the Clone Wars, so again they're not really a significant part of the mythology, so I'm not sure a series around them merits much attention. I do believe that it will be done in the same similar art style of the Clone Wars, so that's always good to keep that same continuity. We don't have any details regarding the amount of episodes and which characters they will focus on the most, so again very scant details, but for me, on the initial impression that it feels very inessential at this point. I'm not sure why we are focusing on this group of characters, but as a piece of individual content it still could be good to watch, but again just feels very insignificant, I would say, at this point. But we will see what happens in the future regarding this series. The next announcement we have was the Andor series. Now this follows the adventures of Cassian Andor, the character from the Rogue One story, which detailed how the Death Star's plans were acquired. And once again, I asked a similar question as the previous announcements. Is this a story that really is worth investing in? As we all know, the Rogue One movie, we know what happens to Cassian at the climactic end of that story. We see him and the lead character from the Rogue One story, they get stranded on the planet, which then ultimately gets destroyed. So we know the fate of this character. So what really ensures in terms of going back to his story? Again, he's not a character that was mentioned post the events of Rogue One, so what will really link in terms of the standalone adventures that we see him participate in? How will this link to any particular relevant stories within the Star Wars mythology? We will have to wait and see, but again, there's not much to go on. But I just asked the question again, is this a story or is this a character really worth investing in? I wasn't a massive fan of Rogue One, to be honest. I just found a lot of the characters to be very bland. So there's not really too much to say about this character. Again, until we see more details and get a lot more in terms of footage. There was a sizzle reel involved, but that was really taking more footage from Rogue One and using kind of fancy animated graphics, and I feel this is very much of an insignificant character. But again, if they can build a good storyline and produce very much of spectacular effects, then maybe it's a show investing for in the future. Another announcement was the Acolytes. Now this will be a story set in the High Republic era. For anybody who doesn't know what the High Republic is, this is a very much of a bygone era set way ahead before the events of the original trilogy, where the Jedi were a far more larger group and far more active in terms of the events going on within the galaxy. If you go through, you will see previous content in terms of novelization concerning the High Republic, characters such as Avar Kriss involved, so you can check out more of those details online. All we really know about the show is that it will be a female centric storyline, and that is directed by Leslie Headland, who created the Russian Doll series. Now again, I haven't watched that show, so I don't really know much about that show, so anybody would like to tell me in the comments whether that's a good or bad show. Again, when we get that description that is female centric, again we inflame the reaction of identity politics involved. So I hope when the show does arrive that it won't just focus on the fact that there are female-led characters, and it will give us again an idea of the larger story regarding the High Republic and the Jedi and their role within the galaxy. So hopefully we get a much more expansive story within the mythology of Star Wars. But once again, that's all the details that we have to go on, and we'll have to wait and see in the upcoming months for more details on where they will take the story regarding the High Republic. The next announcement that we had was Lando, and this will be a prequel series charting the adventures of Lando Calrissian. Now of course, we all know the most famous portrayal of this character by Billy D. Williams from the original trilogy. He of course made a return in The Rise of Skywalker, the last entry of the Disney Star Wars trilogy. That's the portrayal that we know most from the character. Of course, Donald Glover made an appearance as a younger version of his character in Solo, a Star Wars story. So it's unsure yet whether he will return. There is no casting announcement so far, so maybe he will, maybe they might go for a younger version of Lando, because I think if you go for a younger version, that way then you don't have to necessarily tie the story to Han Solo. You can be more free and make sure it's a much more of a Lando focused narrative. So that's what I think they will go for. I think we will maybe see a teenager version of Lando, and they can then build the story from again. I've got no other information to suggest that that's what they will go for. So we will wait and see what goes ahead with that character. I think overall, from my perspective, I'm always invested most in the Billy D. Williams version of the character. I was very indifferent to the Donald Glover performance. He wasn't bad, he did a decent job, but again, I'm not really as invested in a younger version of Lando and what he's been up to. Again, we're going back to the prequel stories. Is it really that significant a story for Lando in his younger years, what he's been up to? Again, I'm not sure whether this will tie into any of the other announcement shows that we've seen announced. We have to wait and see. But for now, not really much to go on. The fact that Lando would appear. Another announcement was a droid story, which will be an animated series focusing on R2-D2 and C-3PO and the further adventures that they have. Now again, I just have to say I have very low interest in this. Of course, we know that R2-D2 and C-3PO are very iconic in terms of the Star Wars story and the original trilogy, but they're not lead characters. They are primarily supporting characters, more observers, if you like, of what goes on within the Star Wars stories. They're not strong enough to carry their own lead stories. We saw in the Clone Wars where we had various story arcs where R2-D2 and C-3PO were the main characters, and for me those episodes never worked. I checked out a lot in terms of those narratives that they tried to tell. They're just not strong enough characters to hold their own series, for me anyway. So we'll wait and see for more details. I think we're gonna really get an idea more in terms of the human characters that they involve within the story. But just a quick overall impression, I'm just not invested in any stories led by R2-D2 or C-3PO. Not the fact that I dislike them as characters, I just don't feel they're strong enough to withhold their own storyline. But again, we'll wait for more details regarding this animated series. Visions, and this will be an anthology collection of short films from 10 different Japanese animation creators. So an animated Star Wars or Star Wars content. We'll wait and see what will be the style. Would it be a more traditional 2D animation style, or would it be a more CG animated style? We'll wait the details on that. Again, no real thoughts or impressions because there was no real footage that they showed in the presentation. So yet again, like a lot of this content, we will just have to wait and see what further develops from this. Are we really invested? Well, we can't really comment until we get some semblance of the plot or the storyline and how will it integrate into the other shows that they've announced as well. So not really a lot more to see on this front, but we'll just have to wait for more details concerning Vision and the animated style that they go for regarding this series of animated short stories. Another announcement that stood out for a lot of people watching this presentation was Rogue Squadron, and this will be a movie within the Star Wars franchise due for release I think in 2023, so that's a long time away. So I questioned originally the idea behind announcing a movie that won't be released for such a long time. The other big revelation from this Rogue Squadron news was the fact that it will be directed by Patty Jenkins, who we all know as a very established director, most famous recently for the fact that she directed the 2 Wonder Woman movies starring Gal Gadot. Now, there has been a recent fallout following the HBO Max and their decision to announce Wonder Woman on the streaming platform. Patty Jenkins, along with other directors, has spoken out about how this has been handled in terms of the streaming service. So that really brought about a lot of buzz and attention and talking points as well. Many people have speculated that what will happen in terms of Wonder Woman 3, if we get that, if Patty Jenkins is going to be involved in Rogue Squadron, will we get a trilogy conclusion to Wonder Woman directed by Patty Jenkins? So that's really a lot of huge talking points. Again, in terms of Rogue Squadron, there wasn't really a lot of details involved. Will it tie into the computer games of the same titles? We will wait and see. Patty Jenkins is a good director, so I suppose that's an early good sign as opposed to the quality of the movie. But right now the buzz was really more about Patty Jenkins being involved and whether it will mean a departure from her from Warner Brothers, and whether there will be a separate director from the 3rd Wonder Woman movie, which we assume will get made. But right now at this point, there's not really a lot more speculation as what we can say about Rogue Squadron. We'll await further details in the long run, but Patty Jenkins directing is a good sign, and I'm pretty sure it will come with a hefty budget and may prove to be a worthy addition in terms of the cinematic Star Wars franchise. So we'll wait and see what happens with that in the long run. So that's it for now, a very extensive breakdown on all the Star Wars related content. Those are my overall thoughts and feelings on what I feel is most stand out within the announcement. Let me know what you think in the comments below. What stood out for you most about the Star Wars announcements. Are you very happy, if you are a Star Wars fans, that we are seeing a big push in terms of content regarding Star Wars? Do you think this is a push in the right direction in terms of getting a more positive outlook within the franchise? We seem to be on good solid ground within The Mandalorian, which of course has been announced for a 3rd season, which we knew about already. So do you think this is good signs that we are taking the franchise seriously and moving it in a certain direction? Or are you, like me, very concerned of the fact that 90% of the content seems to be again concerned in the past storylines, and you would like to see much more of a forward movement in terms of the continuity with new characters, new storylines, and much more of a established mythology within Star Wars? Let's really try and broaden it out where we can get new sets of Jedi or new Sith characters or new powerful characters in the long run. What about new empires and new revolutions going forward? I think that would be a far more bolder and interesting direction that we would like to see a lot more from Star Wars. But again, let me know your thoughts and reactions in the comments below, as well as hitting those like and subscribe buttons so I can continue to provide you with more high quality content in the long run. I will provide more details on the recent Marvel superhero shows, Loki, WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier, and also I will comment on the Batwoman trailer that was released. For some reason, I don't know why, at the same time within this all this content, but I will provide a breakdown for that very shortly in the future as well. But in terms of the Star Wars content, I have very overall mixed feelings, as I've explained at the beginning of this video. But let me know what your thoughts are on this huge amount of announcements that we have seen on the Disney Plus platform. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay at safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.